Good morning, everybody. Welcome, 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 welcome to another live episode of Women Unleashed. You are here on the platform called Grace Harris, author and transformational coach. We've had a little bit of a break for the last 2 weeks from Women Unleashed, but today I am so excited to have a conversation with a beautiful lady for a couple of reasons. Well, one, it is the full moon in the Sagittarius sign, which means that it's all about zooming out, it's all about big vision, it's all about perspective, it's all about remembering our greatness and how far we've come so far. And the second reason is I was saying to my beautiful guest earlier before we went on live that I was doing a little review of our conversation early this morning by myself, and I couldn't help but just smile to myself because this conversation really, really excites me. It's my jam. And today we're going to be sharing with you about, an aspect of how you can heal. And this is specifically around decluttering. Decluttering, whether that's physically around you, energetically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually. And I cannot tell you enough how much it excites me. That's just the weirdo that I am. But I want to remind you that in Women Unleashed, I do believe, so this is about creating intergenerational transformation. And I always believe when you do have easy conversations in life, chances are you tend to have hard, it's easy conversation, hard life. But when you do have the proper, harder conversations, the deep and meaningful ones, you do have the easy life. So today, once again, I am so happy to create this container, this community, this environment for you where I can ask an influencer, where I can ask someone who's made a significant impact in their lives, in their life and in the lives of other people, some questions that are designed to give you inspiration, to give you hope, to give you activation, to give you motivation. Because I know, if you're watching Women Unleashed based off of the people that have watched this for months and months now, you're a woman and maybe even a gentleman who's at the stage of your life where you want to be able to make a difference and come out of a struggle that you have known for so long. That's one. Or you could be someone who's already making a difference, but just need that extra oomph. We can never get enough reinforcement, right? Yes, yes. So, without further ado, let me introduce my guest today. She is a leader, an author, a speaker, a healer, and she has a framework that she's going to share with us, as well as a really impactful backstory. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the beautiful Miss Crystal Home. Crystal, how are you, my love?
I am great. I'm so happy to be here and get to talk with you this morning.
Thank you for being here. I know you have such a busy, busy time and also visiting your beautiful son. And we know what that's like, mommy and son time, being a mom myself. And so I am grateful. I am blessed to have you. I would like to ask you, what made you passionate about helping others to heal and transform their lives using the overall overarching methodology of decluttering? What was the story behind that?
Well, I, I started with energy work when I was a very young girl, and I grew up in an abusive home. And so for me, it was sort of, I spent most of my life really studying and learning about sort of empowering women, right? Empowering women to heal and overcome their own
Mhm.
traumatic life experiences. Um, yeah.
Yeah. And I know that there was a time in your life where you kind of like for a little while you've forgotten that you knew about um, I so I'm a quarter Chinese. So I'm gonna say this in the Chinese way. You knew a little bit about feng shui, but I think in the Western world we say some how do you is it feng shui? Is that how you say
Feng
that?
shui.
Feng shui, yeah.
Yeah, that's
Yeah, and then there was an event where remind me where you kind of like rediscovered it because of something that occurred. Um,
Well, I had always studied energy work as sort of a way of manifesting a different life.
mm,
Was is sort of how I was introduced to it, right? I was introduced to magic when I was 9, and I understood that it was all about energy and it was manifesting something different. Um, and because I lived in an abusive home, to me that seemed the only way out was some magical miracle that I would maybe escape from. Um, if I were to, make that happen. And so I'd always studied energy work. And it wasn't until as an adult I went back to school, second career. And I went back to school to become an interior designer, which was also a passion of mine, right? I was always redecorating something in my house, in my friend's house, somewhere. And so I went to school to become an interior designer. And but I had, gen eds just like every other college program. But because I went to an art school in my psychology class, right, I had to write a paper based on something related to my field of study. And so I decided to write a paper on feng shui. Um, it I had heard about it. It had only really been popular in the West, in the United States, for maybe 5 or 6 years at that time. So I'd heard about it, but I was a single mom working full time, going to school full time. I did not have extra time to read books just for fun. So I hadn't had a chance to study on it yet. And so I chose feng shui as my subject matter for this psychology paper. And so I actually came into feng shui a little bit differently than most people, right? Um,
mm,
and so I checked out every book the library had on feng shui, and I was determined to get a perfect A on my paper. But after I read this 2 foot tall stack of books, quite frankly, I was more confused about feng shui and how it works than I was when I started, right? It was every book seemed to say something different. There was no cohesive patterns. There was nothing that made a lot of sense to me, but I understood the ideas.
mm,
Like it would, you could manifest a different life if you could get in sync energetically with your space. That part made sense to me. So I just started trying to apply it in my own home and trying to see if I could figure out how it worked, right? Because it didn't make a lot of sense what I was reading versus, 20 years worth of studies on energy work. And, there was a disconnect.
mm.
Um, and so I started trying to apply it in my own life. And, fast forward quite a few years. And, I'd finished school, started at basically my dream job. And, we had lots of international clients, and we had clients from China that their designs, had been submitted for approval, and they rejected them. They actually sent them back to the design firm that I worked for because the feng shui was wrong. And so my boss pulled the entire design team together in a panic. Please help. Who knows anything about feng shui? We've got to fix this. I mean, I was working in very high end residential design. These were $1 million projects. You can't flounder on those, you know what I mean? And so I she was in a panic mode, like, who can help me? And I was the only person to raise my hand. I was the only person to volunteer and acknowledge that I knew anything at all about feng shui. And she literally handed me the entire project and told me to fix it. And I freaked out. Like, I had no idea if I actually knew anything at all about feng shui and how it really worked. I'd been studying it for years, but I still didn't feel confident about it. And I had no idea how much the client knew. They knew it was wrong, but like, I don't know if they, I don't, for all I know, they could have taught it in feng shui in school in China. And everybody knows, in depth. I had no clue. And so I went to work and I just was like, let me see if I can figure it out. And I there was a lot of imposter syndrome that happened during that project,
Yeah.
but I really, really fell in love with not just the aesthetics, right? Which is all of the interior design part, making it look, bringing your vision to life and all of that, but also energetically getting them into sync with their space really was I really just fell in love with blending them both together. So I I decided I was going to find a school that taught feng shui, and I was going to learn it for real. So I had no more doubts about myself and my abilities and taking on clients. And so I found a school that taught traditional feng shui, and of course learned about why there was so much confusion out there and why it was so hard to to figure it out on my own. And then I started taking on clients, and this was way back in like 2008, when the recession happened back
Mhm.
then.
Yeah.
um and so I got laid off from my job and I started taking on my own clients, just to help feng shui, their space. And they all would get stuck in the same place. I was trying to do something a little bit different. I was on my own healing journey and I was working with a coach. And I had all these women that were in the group with me. And so I just was like, hey, let me feng shui your place. And at the time it was to help them find love, and to heal and overcome from, a divorce, or, the ending of a significant relationship. And all of them would get stuck in their clutter. And so I would it was very like spontaneous, intuitive coaching just from my own life experience. A lot of times it felt like just downloads from, like, I had no idea where these words were coming from out of my mouth. They just were. But I also started then, trying to study what I could about clutter, right? And the psychology of mental illness and mental health and hoarding and all of those things. And so way back then there wasn't a whole lot of information on that. Like there is more books and stuff on it now. But um yeah, it was just sort of, that was more like PhD in just on the job training, right?
I love that.
um but I fell in love with it, and I did that for a while, um and then I just really switched gears to helping entrepreneurs.
Mm.
Same thing. I just They were just my people, right? They're out here trying to change the world instead of, yeah, there was just some significant changes for me. And yeah, that was when I really just, I feel like I found my purpose of just helping women lift themselves up and declutter all the crap that keeps them playing, small, and just help empower them to change the world, because it's going
Yeah.
to take all of us.
Yes. Yes. Thank you. That was you said some really, really, really important things that I want to just well, repeat, because I love what you said about it was kind of like doing a PhD on the job training, because for a lot of women who would be listening to this now and in the future, is that life itself and entrepreneurship, whatever it is that you're doing as a multi-passionate entrepreneur, you could be a speaker, author, coach, a leader, or whatever it is. A lot of it, many people suffer from what you mentioned, the imposter syndrome, which is essentially a lack of self-confidence. And this is, I always, always love talking about the myth about confidence, is that we all think we have to get confidence to be able to do something. But as Crystal said, often it is like a PhD on the job kind of thing, that you've got to go deep and do it. And then the confidence comes to you, not so much as it comes, but it grows inside of you. And so I love that she mentioned that. But and also you told me about Crystal. Now I serve entrepreneurs because it just felt right for me. And it's similar to your PhD on the job, is that don't be afraid to to start where you feel you can get started, and everything will evolve. There is always evolution for as long as you're breathing air. And that's the idea of growing. That's the idea of transformation. That's the idea of finding whatever it is that you don't even know you're searching for. And I cannot reinforce enough that, often we feel, we ask ourselves the question, well, how do I do this? Where do I start? And then we overanalyze, we overcomplicate, we overjudge a situation instead of just doing it, and just growing and evolving in the process. Um, I love also, Crystal, when you said that, in the beginning, when you read those 20-foot stack of books, it makes sense to you. You said you just got the idea, even though, the theory of it didn't make sense. You understood the energetic idea that as long as there is a synchronicity in the energetic field, then that's really what it's about. I love how you shared a little bit. Uh, Obviously, people usually, in my experience, especially as a transformational coach, we women don't really do deep work like this unless they have been through, adverse life experiences. In your case, you talked about having been raised in a difficult childhood, with some, well, yeah, tension and conflict and abuse and all that. But you talked about magic. Ooh, I love that. Um, so before I ask you, moving forward, as to how you help entrepreneurs, indulge me here for a couple of minutes, because it's interesting. You talked about magic when you were about 8, 9 years old, when you started thinking and believing in it. Because, my memoir, Become the Woman of Your Dreams, I dedicated one entire chapter about magic, and it was around the same age, 7, 8, or 9, when I was introduced to the concept of magic. And you have to read the book. I'm not going to spoil it for you guys, but essentially there was a sensation, just like Crystal had described, is that my experience of my childhood was so difficult that when someone introduced the concept of magic to me, that I could just change things in one, I don't know, one twing of a magic wand, or I don't know, something, I was into it. I was like, wow, imagine if I can actually change the contrast of the gray and the black into colors and textures, the sadness to beauty. And so tell me just a little bit about this experience. Who taught you magic, and how did you hang on to the idea of it? How did it play a role in your life as a woman?
Um, so my stepmom actually was the person who introduced me to magic. She was incredibly witchy. And she was my hero. She was my mentor. When I was 8, my parents got divorced. And when I was 9, they both remarried. My mom remarried a violently abusive alcoholic pedophile. And my dad remarried this amazingly witchy woman who taught me all about, magic and manifesting and uh, the abundance of life. And when I told my mom that her husband was who he is, she called me a liar. She covered up all of the evidence about it. And so there wasn't any way out, right? The only avenue that I could see was to escape on my own, right? I felt like I was kind of a fighter. Even then, I was very much like, nope, I'm not putting up with this. I mean, and I told my mom, like, it's him or me. I gave her an ultimatum at 8 years old, like, it's him or me. You better decide. And I mean, they're still married to this day. So she made her decision. And I decided in that moment I was never going to be anything like her. And I consciously began looking for someone else. And luckily, this amazing woman just sort of fell into my lap, and it was that sort of introduction to magic that led me to studying witchcraft and the history of women and the oppression of women, and all of the witch burnings, and the rise of the patriarchy, and it led me to studying all of these things, which also led me, I didn't ever magically escape my childhood, but I did turn 18 and moved out on my own eventually, and so it just led me into like this particular path, um
Mm,
that was
love
just sort of a lifelong study around starting with empowering even myself, right? And empowering the women around me. Um,
that. Beautiful. Thank you for sharing. I love it. I love it because the reason, part of the reason I was a little bit, I had a little self agenda, if you will, asking that question because I do teach, a modality called the atomic self love. And it really is when we do remember who we really are when we're younger, that one thing that led us to who we are. And as Crystal had shared, she'd always been someone who's strong. And that act of him or me, a decision made, even though nothing would have immediately manifested from that kind of self leadership, that is an atomic power, atomic kind of self love. And I just love to remind women that you have it. And it is, we go so deep in my container, in my programs, just, and that in itself, when once you discover that, you then can transform into a woman who walks into a room with this presence that people will just hold their breath because they just know that you know your power. So amazing. Thank you, Crystal. So today, wow, you help entrepreneurs. I'm an entrepreneur. You're an
mhm.
entrepreneur. Many women watching these are entrepreneurs. Please enlighten us about the power of decluttering to be able to manifest, as we know, being an entrepreneur, being just a woman, even, can be really chaotic and madness. So please enlighten us. What are some fundamental insights that we need to be thinking about and doing?
Well, in all of everything that I've learned and everything that I've studied and everything even that I've experienced, your space is a reflection of you, you know, at an energetic level, even at an aesthetic level, right? We buy things because of what we think and what we believe and what we're drawn to, but we're drawn to all of those things based on what we think and what we believe and what we were taught as children, and so we wind up with clutter in our space that is a reflection of all these limiting beliefs that keep us playing really, really small.
Mm, wow. So how do we pick up on how do we become aware of what we're doing in our physical space that's reflecting the inner space? I mean, how do we know that these inner blockages are actually reflective of what's around us? Is there like a science to it, or is it more of an intuitive attuning type thing?
Well, when it comes to feng shui is all based in science, right? It's based in architecture, geometry and physics.
Okay.
So it's all math calculations um, to get you energetically into alignment with your space. But when you really start feng shui, that is sort of the gist of it, right? It's about adjusting the energy in your space. It's about manipulating the space and what's in such a way that the energy flows to empower you rather than to drain you.
Mm, okay.
But your home, right, has its own energetic frequency, and you also have an energetic frequency. And so when the two of you combine, right, when you move into a home, your energetic your those energetic frequencies is like a marriage, right? You're either going to be in alignment or out of alignment with your space. And sometimes it's hard to tell um based on how you feel. Sometimes you can tell. Sometimes you walk in a space and it just feels yuck, right? You can feel it. You walk in and you're like, I do not want to be here. You are definitely out of alignment with the energy in that space. But there's other times you might walk into a space and it's going to feel good because it's in alignment with the crap that you believe.
Ah, tricky.
It's very tricky, which is why these, you know, well, not to mention the fact that it's totally wrong, but that's why these people that go out there preaching the fake feng shui and the woo-woo stuff, um, that's that's why what they're teaching A doesn't work, but B also gives feng shui a bad name and why people think it's so complicated. That's why all these books are out there with all this wrong information because they're just preaching fake feng shui, capitalism, to make money rather than teaching something useful to people that benefits them.
Mm, okay. Wow, so it's really it it feels to me that feng shui or not, it's about being able to be deeply attuned to from the inside. It's really about
Right, because yeah, 100%. Yes, your
yeah,
space is a mirror.
yeah.
So when you start looking at your space like a mirror as a reflection, you get all sorts of insights into what is going on internally for you,
Mm,
right? And so when you look at your clutter, like your scarcity clutter, your worthiness clutter, your obligation clutter, and all of those things are reflecting what you're believing, they're just reinforcing those beliefs.
oh,
I
let's
know that one hurts,
get into
doesn't it?
let's get into
Yeah.
it. So what are I know you have this framework. You've developed the 5 steps to declutter your mind. Please teach us a little bit about these frameworks. If yeah, if you will, I would love to hear.
Yes. Yes. This is the declutter your mindset is the first pillar in my overall framework, the designed life method, right? Which is mind, body, soul, and home. The mindset piece relates to clutter. And that's where I start with all of my clients. That's where I started back in the day. That was where they all got stuck, is in the clutter. Because we hold on to those beliefs, right? We believe in them. And so it makes it really hard to let go of the clutter that is reinforcing them. It takes work, it takes that healing transformation.
Mm.
And so there is a process that you really do have to go to or go through. And I mean, I sort of had to learn that one even the hard way. I'd never had a problem decluttering, right? I was sort of the throwaway kid, right? As soon as I gave my mom the ultimatum, it became, well, I hate you and I hate you too. And, there was a lot of, we'd get rid of you if we could, but we're not going to let you go to your father where you'd be happy. Like we're going to make you be here. And so there was a lot of that sort of conflict. Now, when I started like working with clients and I started learning about it, I still had never struggled with this. When I got hurt and all of a sudden I was stuck and really like in this space and my space got cluttered, right? I couldn't walk, I couldn't really move. My own space got cluttered is when I really had to like think about it, like I really had to think about what do I do? What is my process for decluttering? Why don't I get stuck like other people do? And so I really started diving into what does it take to declutter, truly declutter in a way that works, not just the superficial, like if it sparks joy crap, because that just gets rid of the surface level of clutter and it doesn't get down deep into the parts that are keeping you stuck in your trauma.
Ooh, can you give us one step on how do you really go deep and not just address the superficial decluttering crap, as you said? Like, because I know the reason I'm really passionate about asking this question is because for someone who's been working on my own narrative and my own beliefs for years now, and the transformation is phenomenal. But just
Mm,
when I think it's phenomenal, I discover some more. I continuously discover, voices that I couldn't have heard them before because there's so many. And the more you declutter, the more you remove a belief system, the deep-seated ones come to surface, and then you have to address that. So who knows really how much is in the cellular memory. And so I know that the more tools that I have in my toolkit, the better for me. So yeah.
Yeah, most people try to go straight from step 1 to step 5, right? They discover their clutter, right? I have clutter, here it is, and now I'm going to donate it and get rid of it. And that's like step 1, step 5. But they miss step 2, 3, and 4, which is really where all the magic happens, of, you know, digging deep, diving deep into it, diagnosing it, really, disconnecting from it, dissolving that connection so that you can then get rid of it, right? Make it all the way to step 5 and donate and release all of it, not just the physical clutter, but the mental and emotional clutter that it is reflecting to you, right? Because we just continually buy the same clutter over and over and over again. The same way we continue to get into like the same relationship over and over and over again, just with a new face, right? It's until we heal that, right? Then we're just going to be stuck on that hamster wheel. The
Mm.
same is true for our clutter. If you go straight from step 1 to step 5 and you don't do the 3 steps in the middle, you're just going to buy new clutter that has a new face, but it's the same story.
Mm. And ladies and gentlemen, we're going to give you a free copy of the 5 steps to declutter your mindset as a gift from Crystal. But you mentioned, Crystal, examples of relationship as well as in business, and I love that you say that because when it comes to cycles of toxic relationship, it the tendency is that we tend to look at the overarching, like you said, beginning and end. So if we look at I started a toxic relationship, I ended it, and so I shouldn't have to repeat it. But then what happens is often we repeat it because we are not aware that it's the same, just in a sort of like a different package. It's because the steps, probably the middle steps, we haven't gone deep enough into. And I want to say, I guess for me, I want to just illustrate an example here, just so it can be a little bit more tangible for others. And this is probably, this is not a relationship one, but it's about money karma drama. Oh, who wants an example about money? Okay, so I've been working on my money mindset for years and years and years, and so it's great because I've been able to to manifest things that I wouldn't have otherwise manifested if I didn't work on my money mindset. However, I thought, like what Crystal said, I've uncovered the beginning, and then I believe that I wrapped a bow on it, and it's done. Until one day, this isn't so long ago, when I was doing this mini course from a friend of mine who's an amazing, amazing spiritual teacher. And all she did was this, right? It was simple, simple exercise. And I was blown away because it was just her way of saying to me, just get into a state of letting go and relaxation. No big deal, wherever you are. Don't care if you're in an airport, just relax and just let go of everything. And think about the very first memory that you have about money. And so I basically did what she said. I didn't really care. Oh, this is not such a deep exercise. I'm not gonna focus so much. Like she said, I'm just gonna let go. So because I trusted that it doesn't have to be a difficult work, then I just relaxed. And so I thought, what is my first memory of money? And funnily enough, the first memory of money that I have was actually written in this book, and I didn't know that. And it was about this experience when I was a little girl, and I was really young, really, really young. I don't know, 3 or 4 years old. And I remember a group of people invited to my mother's house to do, to like play cards all night. And money was involved. And when they were playing cards, so they would bet the money in the middle, but there's a little tiny container about that shape where all the gamblers would put money in it as like a token for the host for hosting. So everyone who would win or who feels generous would shove money in it. And because everyone was shoving money in it, this container would fill up like so quickly. And my job was to grab it and empty it so that it's always empty and you could always fill money into it. That was my job. So that's my first experience of money. So I thought about that memory and I'm like, yeah, that's my experience of money. And so I then decoded it because the codes from that experience were number one, money is abundant, money overflows. Money is everywhere. People love to give money. You can receive money anytime. And I'm like, whoa, that's good. Positive, positive, positive. And then I kept digging into it and bam, I found it. And
You
it
had
was
to
that,
empty it.
yeah, you have to empty it first before you can receive some more. And you only have a small container. I was like,
Hmm.
freaking hell.
Yep. Yep.
Freaking
I
hell.
know. I've done some of it too. And it's just like we used to get a quarter every week for to put in our church envelope. And I had to give 100% of my money to charity,
Yeah.
right? To save the starving kids in Africa. My mom would always talk about the starving kids in Africa and how I had to give them all of my money so that they wouldn't starve anymore. So yeah, I had a lot of that. I can't keep any money. Like I have to give it all away all the time. And yeah, I've done that too, dug into those money stories over and over and over because clutter is, just like the healing process, it's like this upward spiral, right? You get rid of the current clutter that you have, but humans are wired to purchase, to acquire, to buy things. Oh, as I hit my lamp. We're acquired to, or we are wired to buy things and acquire things. So we're always going to have new clutter, which means we have to let go of the old clutter. But our new clutter should be telling a different story than the old clutter, because once that story is gone, it's done, right? The story, I mean, we know the story, but it doesn't have that hold on us anymore. So then you get to the next layer of clutter and it's like, oh, I still have a, whatever, a scarcity story, or I still have a story around, how small my container is, or how often I can get money, or, like there's still a new, like there might be another story underneath that story of, yeah. So your clutter is always new, and, new level, new devil, right? Isn't that what they say? The clutter is the same. You reach a new level and all of a sudden you find a new story of whatever that is, because we all have scarcity stories, we all have worthiness stories, we all have obligation stories. No matter how wealthy we get, right, and how good things are going for us, we just reach a new level of
Wow, you're
living.
so wise. I love that. So, ladies, remember that new level, new devil. It's always worth decluttering. It's always worth working on yourself. That's why I always laugh when my partner says to me, honey, my ultimate dream is to be enlightened. And it just cracks me up.
Right, well,
Like, yeah.
good
Good
luck
luck
with
with that.
that. That is not a destination that exists. Enlightenment is in the journey.
Oh, bless him, bless him.
Yes.
Um, all righty. Well, thank you so much for this beautiful conversation, and we will, put that link below for you guys to have the declutter your mindset framework from Crystal. But Crystal, before I let you go, please tell us about where we can have more of you, get in touch with you, work with you, and connect with you, please.
Um, well, if you download the free Declutter Your Mindset method, that will put you in touch with me for sure. You can email me at any time, or set up a call. It's free. We can have a consultation and we can talk about your space and your struggle, and if I can help you with your space, if we're a good match. And if you just want to hang out with me online, I'm on YouTube a lot.
Ooh.
And yeah, I'm trying to put out as much good content as I can to help people who maybe aren't there yet, where where they are ready to work with me. A lot of people want to, it's like you want to clean before the housekeeper comes, right? I get that a lot. People want to do some of the decluttering before they're ready to hire me and admit to it, because we have a lot of shame around our clutter.
Mm,
And so that's
yeah.
okay too. And but I don't believe we should have shame around our clutter. So, YouTube is there to help you get past that so that we can have an honest conversation about how I can help you.
Thank you for that. I will take that as your last wisdom to share with us today, that we shouldn't be ashamed of our clutter. Yeah, it's the beginning of decluttering, and really, joy is the acknowledgement, the self love, the level of self love that I am okay. I have all these clutter and baggage or whatever it is, but I am okay. And there's people around me that can help and want to help. And we are here to help you. We love you, and we thank you for hanging out again. Crystal,
Mhm.
thank you so much for your beautiful time, for your sacred time with me. And I send you love, and we will talk to you everyone again soon. Bye for now.
Thank you. Bye.